Let's go now to Misty to talk about this from a legal perspective. So, Misty, there were two court hearings today related to the situation in Minneapolis. The first one on the state's efforts to declare the administration's deployment of federal agents as unlawful. What stood out to you in that hearing today?
So this is interesting because the federal government's argument, the DOJ said that this is a federal law enforcement operation and therefore it falls under executive authority to execute it as they see fit. Now, Minnesota's argument is that it is not a valid law enforcement action. It's actually something being taken to coerce Minnesota into agreeing with or implementing federal government and the administration's policies. So that's the crux of the argument. What I found interesting, the judge came out the gate and said, I'm not here to make a decision on the merits of any immigration law enforcement operation, but did challenge the federal government on 2 points that squarely fit into Minnesota's argument. The first being skepticism about whether or not the amount of ICE officers being deployed, use of border security, is necessary to deal with issues with enforcing this law enforcement action. The second, and very interestingly, is a letter that Pam Bondi sent to Tim Walz over the weekend, which asks for the state to repeal sanctuary city policies, talks about turning over voter rolls and registrations, records regarding Medicaid that would be central to a fraud investigation. The judge saying, is the DOJ trying to circumvent what would be court-related procedures by pressuring Minnesota with this law enforcement operation? So she did not rule from the bench today. We'll have to wait and see what that decision is. She did say it will be coming imminently. She understands that if there's a front burner, this is on the front of that front burner as far as necessity to get clarity on this issue.
And then we have a second case where state officials are trying to prevent federal officials from destroying evidence in this shooting. What did the judge say about that?
So that hearing just ended, and the judge did not make a decision from the bench, but what Minnesota is asking is for preservation of evidence. The administration, Department of Justice, saying they're preserving evidence as they would in any other case. But the idea is Minnesota is raising what they say are anomalies, things that are not in accordance with typical policies and procedures in this investigation. They're not a part of the investigation on the state side, and therefore it's critical that they at some point have cooperation with the federal government and also have the ability to access that investigative material down the road. So we're still waiting on that decision as well.
Okay, Misty Marris, thank you for that. We appreciate it.